The first thing I registered was the taste. It was a cloying, waxy sweetness, like cheap lipstick and stale champagne. The second was the smell, a cloud of hairspray and something floral, maybe jasmine. My head was pounding, a deep rhythmic throb that seemed to sync up with the bass of a song I could vaguely hear bleeding through a wall somewhere. I tried to open my eyes, but the lids felt glued shut. When I finally managed to peel them open, the world was a blurry mess of pink and gold. I was lying on a plush chaise lounge, the kind you see in old Hollywood movies. Soft, flattering light came from a row of vanity bulbs surrounding a large mirror. My reflection stared back. But it wasn't me, not my me, anyway. The face in the mirror belonged to a stranger, a woman. Her hair was a cascade of dark, shoulder-length waves that framed a face with impossibly smooth skin. Her eyes, my eyes, were defined with a sharp black line and smoky shadow. Her lips, the source of that waxy taste, were painted a glossy, vibrant pink. A small glittering mole was expertly drawn just above the curve of her upper lip. I tried to sit up, and that's when I noticed the dress. It was a tight crimson cocktail dress, the fabric cool and unforgiving against my skin. It hugged every contour of a body that felt both familiar and alien. My chest felt fuller, my waist felt cinched, almost uncomfortably so. My legs were bare and felt strangely smooth, ending in a pair of towering black heels, one of which had slipped off my foot and was dangling from my toes. A wave of nausea and pure, unadulterated panic washed over me. Where was I? How did I get here? The last thing I remembered was the company's end-of-year party. Shots, lots of them. My boss, Mr. Henderson, was doing a surprisingly good impression of a rock star. Sarah from marketing was laughing so hard she snorted. And Liam was there, goading me on. "Come on, Ethan," he'd slurred, his arms slung around my shoulder. "Just one more, for the team." The memory was foggy, but a few words cut through the haze. A bet, a stupid, drunken bet. The door to the room creaked open, and a burst of laughter snapped me out of my trance. Sarah, followed by a few other colleagues from the marketing department, spilled into the room. They froze when they saw I was awake, their grins widening. "Well, look who's finally decided to join the living," Sarah chirped, her eyes dancing with amusement. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. What is this? Why am I gestured vaguely at my own body, a gesture that felt oddly delicate and foreign. Kevin, a junior graphic designer, held up his phone, the screen glowing. "You lose, Ethan, big time." He showed me a video. It was me, bleary-eyed and grinning like an idiot, clinking a shot glass with Liam. The audio was terrible, but I could make out my own voice, loud and confident. "A week?" I was saying. "If I can't outdrink you, I'll do it for a whole week. Deal." Liam's voice boomed back. "Deal if I win. You become the new face of the Everly campaign, the living embodiment of Miss Everly." The room erupted in cheers on the video. My stomach dropped. The Everly campaign, it was our company's biggest project of the year, a new line of high-end cosmetics. True Essence by Everly. The entire marketing strategy was built around a mysterious, elegant spokeswoman known only as Miss Everly. They had been searching for a model for months, someone who could embody that perfect, feminine ideal. "You don't remember, do you?" Sarah asked, her tone a mix of pity and glee. "You passed out cold about 20 minutes later. We couldn't just leave you in the men's room, so we brought you here." Here was apparently the women's lounge and makeup room at the event venue. They had spent the last hour, it seemed, fulfilling the first stage of my forfeit. "You lost, Ethan," Kevin said, unable to contain his laughter. "You remember the bet, right? A week. You have to be Miss Everly for the entire marketing launch week." I stared at them, my mind reeling. This had to be a joke, a nightmare. I was Ethan Cole, accountant. I wore gray suits and sensible shoes. My idea of personal grooming was a quick comb-through in the morning. I spent my days staring at spreadsheets, finding solace in the clean, predictable logic of numbers. I wasn't this painted, polished doll in a red dress. "No," I managed to croak. "No way. I'm not doing it." "A bet's a bet," Sarah said. Crossing her arms, she tried to look stern, but the corners of her mouth kept twitching. "Besides, the photo shoot is already booked for Monday. We told Mr. Henderson our model had a last-minute confirmation. He was thrilled. My blood ran cold. Mr. Henderson, our CEO. He thought they had found their Miss Everly, and it was a Paul. Me? You can't be serious, I pleaded, my voice cracking. This will ruin me. I'll be a laughingstock. Or, a new voice said from the doorway, you'll be a star. It was Liam. He leaned against the doorframe, looking unfairly fresh and sober in his tailored suit. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and a slow, infuriatingly charming smile played on his lips. He was the one who had gotten me into this mess. He was the golden boy of the sales department, effortlessly charismatic and universally liked. We were office friends, but in a way that always felt like we were from different planets. He walked into the room, his eyes raking over me from head to toe. I expected a smirk, a cutting joke. Instead, his expression softened into something I couldn't quite read. It looked almost like appreciation. Wow, Cole, he said, his voice a low murmur. They actually did a pretty incredible job. His gaze made my skin tingle. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. I tried to cover myself, pulling at the hem of the ridiculously short dress, but it was a futile gesture. Get me out of this, I hissed at him. Can't do that, buddy, he said, shaking his head slowly. You gave your word. Besides, think of it as a challenge. You're always talking about wanting to step out of your comfort zone. My comfort zone is a 10-mile radius around my cubicle. I shot back. This is another galaxy. Sarah handed me a glass of water and 2 aspirin. Look, Ethan, just for a week. We'll have a professional team with you the whole time. Stylists, makeup artists. They'll handle everything. All you have to do is show up and look pretty. She winked. I looked back at my reflection in the mirror, really looking this time. The initial shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a strange, disorienting curiosity. The person staring back was beautiful. There was no other word for it. The stylists had softened the hard angles of my jawline with clever contouring. The wig, a surprisingly high-quality piece, felt heavy and strange on my head, but the way it framed my face made my eyes seem larger, more expressive. My lips, slick with that pink gloss, looked full and soft. A stylist, a woman with purple hair who I vaguely remembered from the party, stepped forward. We need to get this makeup off you before you go home, and the dress. As she started to gently wipe away the makeup with a cool, scented cloth, I felt a bizarre pang of something, loss. It was ridiculous. I should have been relieved. But as the smoky eyeshadow disappeared, as the foundation was cleansed away, and as my own pale, unremarkable skin reappeared, I felt like a work of art was being erased. The process of being stripped down was even more humiliating than being dressed up. They had put me in a full set of shapewear, including a corset that had been pulling my posture ramrod straight. As they unlaced it, I could finally take a deep breath, but my body felt strangely unsupported without it. They had even padded my hips and chest to create a more feminine silhouette. Removing it all felt like peeling off a second skin. Finally, I was back in my own rumpled shirt and trousers, which felt coarse and shapeless after the silkiness of the dress. The spell was broken. I was just Ethan again. But something had shifted. A wire had been tripped inside my head. Liam drove me home, the city lights streaking past the car window. We sat in silence for most of the ride. The air was thick with things unsaid. Listen, he said finally, as he pulled up to my apartment building. I know this is a lot, but you can do this. And if it helps, nobody outside of our little group will ever know it's you. To the world, you'll just be Miss Everly. I didn't answer. I just stared out the window, my mind a whirlwind. And for what it's worth, he added, his voice softer now. She looked amazing. I got out of the car without looking at him and stumbled up to my apartment. I didn't turn on the lights. I just stood in the darkness of my living room, the scent of jasmine and hairspray still clinging to me like a ghost. I could still feel the phantom weight of the wig, the tight embrace of the corset, the smooth slide of the dress against my skin. I walked into the bathroom and stared at my reflection under the harsh fluorescent light. It was just me, plain, boring Ethan Cole. Thin face, tired eyes, a day's worth of stubble starting to show. There was no trace of the woman from the lounge. And for the first time in my entire life, I was disappointed to see myself in the mirror. The bet was a nightmare, a social catastrophe waiting to happen. But a tiny, treacherous part of me, a part I didn't even know existed until tonight, was whispering a dangerous question: what would it be like to be her again? Monday morning arrived like a death sentence. I had barely slept, haunted by fragmented dreams of red dresses and camera flashes. My own clothes felt wrong, my reflection a pale imitation of the vibrant woman from the party. The idea of going to a photo studio and willingly putting on that costume again filled me with a dread so profound it was almost paralyzing. But a bet was a bet, and the thought of facing Liam and the marketing team after backing out was somehow even worse. So I dragged myself out of bed, showered, and put on the most nondescript clothes I owned: a gray hoodie and jeans. I felt like a spy heading into enemy territory. The studio was a massive, white-walled warehouse in the city's arts district. It buzzed with an energy that was completely alien to me. People rushed around with purpose, shouting technical terms I didn't understand. In the center of it all was the set, a seamless white backdrop flooded with impossibly bright lights. Sarah met me at the door and whisked me away to a curtained-off dressing area before anyone could get a good look at me. "Right this way, Miss Everly," she said, her voice a little too loud. The team was waiting for me. There was Marco, the makeup artist, a man with sharp eyes and an even sharper wit. There was Chloe, the hairstylist, who had a calming, motherly presence. And there was Julian, the lead stylist, a whirlwind of dramatic gestures and expensive fabric. "Ah, the canvas has arrived," Julian declared, circling me like a predator. "Let's strip this drabness away and reveal the masterpiece, shall we?" For the next 2 hours, I was their project. It was a completely passive experience. I sat in a chair while they worked, my body a mannequin to be manipulated. Marco began with my face. "Your bone structure is a gift, darling," he murmured, his brushes moving with hypnotic speed. I felt the cool, wet sensation of foundation being blended across my skin. It was different from the rushed job at the party. This was meticulous, layered. He spent ages on my eyes, using what felt like a dozen different brushes to create a soft, alluring look. "We want approachable elegance, not nightclub drama," he explained. He taught me a trick to slightly part my lips to relax my jaw. The moment I did, the waxy, floral scent of lipstick filled my senses again as he carefully applied a shade of dusty rose. The smell was already becoming familiar, a trigger for this strange new identity. Chloe worked on the wig, pinning it to my head with a precision that was both gentle and firm. It was a different one this time, a sleek, honey blonde bob that ended just below my chin. "It frames your face better," she said, tucking a stray strand behind my ear. The weight of it settled on my head, a constant, physical reminder that I was not myself. Then came the clothes. Julian presented a rack of options, but his mind was already made up. "The white dress," he announced. "It's pure, it's classic, it's Everly." Getting into the outfit was an ordeal that required 2 assistants. First came the shapewear again, the same constricting but transformative garments from before. The corset was laced so tightly I felt my posture immediately straighten. My shoulders pulled back. It pushed my chest forward, creating the illusion of a soft, feminine bust with the help of silicone enhancers. My waist was cinched, my hips padded, creating an hourglass figure I could never achieve on my own. It felt like armor. The dress was a simple sleeveless sheath made of a heavy white crepe that skimmed my new curves. It was elegant and understated. The final touch was a pair of nude-colored high heels. They were impossibly high. "I can't walk in these," I stammered, wobbling precariously as I stood up. "You'll learn," Julian said dismissively. "Walk from the hip, not the knee, small steps. Think of it as gliding." He led me to a full-length mirror, and I braced myself. The person staring back at me was a complete stranger. It wasn't the party girl in the red dress. This was someone else entirely. She was sophisticated, poised. The blonde hair softened my features, and the white dress gave her an almost ethereal quality. She looked calm, confident, and utterly, convincingly female. "I can't believe," I whispered, my own voice sounding thin and reedy. "That's me." Marco came up behind me and put his hands on my shoulders. "That, darling, is not you. That is Miss Everly. You are just the engine that makes her run. Now go be her." Walking onto the set was the most terrifying moment of my life. The bright lights were blinding, and I could feel a dozen pairs of eyes on me. The photographer, a stern-looking woman named Petra, assessed me with a critical eye. "Okay, Miss Everly," she said, her voice sharp and professional. "Let's see what you've got. Give me something soft. Think about a secret you're happy to keep." I froze. I had no idea what to do. My body felt stiff and awkward in the tight dress and heels. I was an accountant. I knew how to operate a tenki with my eyes closed. I didn't know how to have a happy secret. "Relax your hands," Petra commanded. "You're holding them like you're about to punch someone." I looked down at my hands. She was right. They were clenched into fists. I tried to loosen them, but they just looked limp and strange. Marco had painted my nails a pale, pearlescent pink, and the sight of them was deeply unsettling. I saw them resting on my keyboard at my desk, the pink tips clacking away on the keys during a break, and the image was so jarring it made my head spin. Julian rushed over. "Breathe, sweetie. Remember what we practiced. Chin down. Just a little. Eyes to me. Now. Smile. No, not like that. That's a hostage smile. A gentle smile, like you just smelled a beautiful flower." I tried again, and again. It felt fake, forced. But then, something clicked. I stopped thinking about being Ethan trying to pretend. I looked at the polished pink nails, felt the weight of the hair on my neck, the squeeze of the corset around my ribs. I started to imagine what she would do. What would Miss Everly do? She wouldn't be nervous. She would be serene. I let my shoulders drop, tilted my head slightly, and let a small, soft smile touch my lips. I thought about the way the dress felt, the power of the high heels making me taller. "There," Petra shouted, "hold that." The camera started clicking, a rapid-fire sound that filled the studio. For the next few hours, I was no longer Ethan. I was a puppet, and Petra, Julian, and Marco were the puppet masters. They molded my body into different poses, adjusted the tilt of my head, told me when to smile and when to look pensive. "Turn your shoulder to me. Arch your back just a little. Laugh gently, as if I've just told you a charming joke." Slowly, painstakingly, I started to get the hang of it. I learned how to shift my weight onto one hip to create a more feminine curve. I learned how to move my hands gracefully, letting them rest on my hip or delicately touch my neck. The stiff, awkward accountant was receding, and this new persona, this Everly, was stepping forward to take his place. There was a strange liberation in it. All the anxieties and insecurities of being Ethan Cole were gone. He wasn't here. Everly was confident. Everly was beautiful, and everyone in this room was telling her so. "Gorgeous, darling, absolutely stunning," Julian would cry out after a particularly good shot. "The camera loves you," Petra admitted, a rare smile gracing her face. I was so immersed in the role that I didn't even notice Liam had arrived until a break was called. He was standing near the edge of the set talking to Sarah, but his eyes were fixed on me. As I walked carefully toward the dressing area, he stepped into my path. "They weren't kidding," he said, his voice low. "You're a natural." I felt a blush rise in my cheeks, a hot feeling that was thankfully hidden beneath Marco's foundation. "I'm just doing what they tell me," I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. "No, it's more than that," he insisted. He reached out, his fingers gently tucking a stray blonde hair back behind my ear. His touch was light, but it sent a jolt through me. His fingertips brushed against the sensitive skin of my neck, and his warm breath was close, smelling faintly of coffee and mint. My heart hammered against the confines of the corset. "You're becoming her." I pulled back, flustered. The intimacy of the gesture was startling. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face, and for a terrifying second, I thought he could see right through the makeup, right through the wig, and see the panicked accountant hiding underneath. But his expression was just captivated. He was looking at Everly. Before I could respond, Julian called me back to the set. The rest of the day was a blur of costume changes and different lighting setups. By the end of it, every muscle in my body ached from holding unnatural poses, and my feet were screaming in agony from the heels. As Chloe carefully removed the wig and Marco began wiping away the makeup, the transformation back to Ethan felt more jarring than ever before. When I finally looked in the mirror, my own face looked plain, washed out, and utterly foreign. The elegant woman was gone, and in her place was just me, a tired man in a gray hoodie. The spell was broken, but the magic lingered. As I left the studio and stepped out into the evening air, I felt different. The world looked the same, but I wasn't. I had spent an entire day seeing the world through another woman's eyes, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had liked the view. Ethan was walking home, but a part of him was still back in that studio, bathed in light, being told he was beautiful. Everly was just an act, a role I was forced to play, but I was beginning to suspect she was a much better part than my own. The photos were a sensation. When the marketing department released the first images of Miss Everly, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The campaign went viral overnight. Bloggers raved about the brand's new face. Social media was flooded with comments. Who is she? She's so elegant. The perfect embodiment of classic beauty. No one suspected a thing. My anonymity was absolute. In the office, I was still Ethan Cole, the quiet guy from accounting. I'd walk past my colleagues as they huddled around a monitor, gushing over the photos, and my stomach would tie itself in knots. "Look at her skin. It's flawless," Sarah would say, conveniently forgetting she knew exactly what was under all that foundation. "She has such a graceful presence," Kevin would add. "They must have found a professional model." Liam would just catch my eye from across the room and give me a subtle, knowing smirk. It was our secret, a strange and electrifying bond that set us apart from everyone else. The success was so huge that what was supposed to be a one-week bet quickly spiraled. Mr. Henderson was ecstatic. Sales projections for the True Essence line went through the roof. He called an emergency meeting with the marketing heads. "This is bigger than we ever imagined," he boomed, his face flushed with excitement. "We can't let this momentum die. We need to extend the campaign. We need more of Miss Everly. We need her in public, a product launch event, maybe a press tour." My heart stopped. A photo studio was one thing. It was a controlled environment, a fantasy world, but going out in public, in broad daylight where anyone could see me, the risk of being exposed, of being laughed at, was terrifying. The marketing department cornered me after the meeting. "Ethan, we know the bet was just for a week," Sarah began, her voice unusually gentle. "But this is a massive opportunity for the company and for you." "For me?" I asked, incredulous. "How is this an opportunity for me?" "Well, for starters," Kevin chimed in, pulling out a sheet of paper. "There's the bonus." He showed me the number. It was more than I made in 6 months. It was enough to pay off my student loans and still have a hefty amount left over. I stared at the figure, my mind struggling to process it. Money had always been a source of stress, a constant, low-grade anxiety in the back of my mind. This was a life-changing amount. "And it's not just the money," Liam added, leaning against the wall. "You created something here. Man, Miss Everly is connecting with people. You'd be walking away from a huge success." I was torn. My instinct, my every self-preservation nerve, screamed at me to run, to take my lumps for breaking the bet and retreat back to the safety of my spreadsheets. But the money was a powerful lure. And then there was that other thing, the thing I was less willing to admit to myself. I was addicted to being Everly. I was addicted to the validation, the praise, the feeling of being beautiful and admired. Being Ethan was safe and predictable. Being Everly was thrilling. I reluctantly agreed. The first public appearance was scheduled for the following week, a product launch at a high-end department store. The preparations were even more intense than for the photo shoot. This time, there was no room for error. Julian, Marco, and Chloe became my full-time handlers. They decided on a new look. Sophisticated daywear. Julian announced the outfit was a chic, tailored navy blue dress that hit just below the knee, paired with a cream-colored blazer. The heels were slightly lower, but still daunting. The transformation process felt more significant this time. It wasn't just for a camera, it was for the real world. As Marco applied the makeup, he spoke in a low, encouraging voice. "Remember, you are not Ethan in a costume. You are Miss Everly. You belong in these clothes. You belong in this world." Chloe fitted a new wig, a rich auburn color styled in soft, elegant waves. "Different color, different vibe," she explained. "Keeps the mystery alive." When I finally looked in the mirror, I saw a poised, professional woman. She looked like she could be a CEO, an art gallery owner, a woman of substance. She looked nothing like me. The car ride to the department store was silent. My hands, with their perfectly manicured nude-colored nails, were sweating. I could feel my heart pounding against the restrictive fabric of my shapewear. "You'll be fine," Liam said from beside me. The company had assigned him as my handler for the event, a move that made my stomach flutter with a mixture of anxiety and something else I couldn't name. "Just stick to the script, smile, wave, answer a few soft questions. I'll be right there the whole time." Stepping out of the car was like stepping onto another planet. A small crowd had gathered, along with a few photographers. The pop of their camera flashes was startling. I instinctively flinched, but then I remembered Julian's training. Chin up, shoulders back, serene smile. I forced my body to obey. I walked from the car to the entrance of the store, my steps small and measured as I tried to glide on the treacherous heels. The world felt different from this vantage point. The slight elevation of the heels, the way the dress swished against my legs, the subtle scent of my own perfume, it was a complete sensory immersion. I could feel the stares of people on the street, but they weren't looks of ridicule or suspicion. They were looks of curiosity, of admiration. A woman walking past with her daughter pointed at me and whispered, "That's her, that's the Everly woman." A man in a business suit gave me an appreciative once-over. Inside, the feeling intensified as I walked through the cosmetics department toward the stage that had been set up. People turned to look. Their eyes followed me. For the first time in my life, I was the center of attention. And not because I had done something clumsy or embarrassing. I was being noticed because I was, for all intents and purposes, a beautiful woman. And the feeling was intoxicating. It was a strange kind of power, a validation that went deeper than any professional accomplishment I had ever had. It wasn't about Ethan Cole's skills or intelligence. It was about Everly's presence. I felt a bizarre sense of pride, a desire to live up to the image I was projecting. I wanted to be worthy of their admiration. I wanted to keep this feeling, to bottle it up and never let it go. I spent an hour on the stage, sitting in an elegant armchair while a host asked me pre-approved questions about the true essence philosophy. I answered in a soft, measured voice that Chloe had coached me to use, a slightly higher register than my own. I spoke about embracing your inner beauty, about confidence. The words felt hollow and scripted, but as I looked out at the faces in the audience, I saw they were hanging on my every word. They believed in Miss Everly, and in that moment, so did I. After the event, as Liam guided me through the crowd and back to the car, my head was spinning. The air outside felt cool on my skin. I could feel the breeze pass through the thin fabric of my dress, a sensation I'd never experienced wearing trousers. It was a small thing, but it felt incredibly, shockingly real. The line between Ethan and Everly, between the performance and the reality, was beginning to blur. I wasn't just playing a part anymore. I was living it. And the scariest part was, I wasn't sure I ever wanted to stop. The success of the department store launch cemented Miss Everly's status as a bona fide brand icon. The company, eager to capitalize on the phenomenon, decided it was time to invest in my, or rather, Everly's long-term development. They told me they were hiring an image consultant, a professional to refine the Everly persona and prepare me for bigger and more demanding public appearances. That's how Miranda Devereaux entered my life. She wasn't just an image consultant. She was a force of nature, a woman in her late 50s. Miranda possessed an ageless elegance and an aura of absolute authority. She was always impeccably dressed in sharp, designer power suits, her silver hair styled in a severe but chic bob. Her eyes were intelligent and piercing, and when she looked at you, you felt as though she could see every secret you'd ever tried to hide. Our first meeting took place in a private suite at a 5-star hotel. I arrived as Ethan, in my usual drab attire. Miranda was waiting for me, sipping an espresso. She didn't stand up. She simply gestured to the chair opposite her. "So," she began, her voice a low, husky purr, "you're the man behind the woman." She studied me for a long, uncomfortable minute. "The raw materials are workable," she said finally, as if I were a piece of clay. "Good bone structure, expressive eyes, but the posture is atrocious, and you carry yourself with all the confidence of a frightened mouse." I bristled at her bluntness, but I couldn't deny she was right. "The work that Marco and Julian have done is commendable. For amateurs," she continued, waving a dismissive hand, "but what they have created is a caricature, a beautiful, but hollow, doll. My job is to give her a soul, to make Everly so real, so convincing that even you forget she isn't." Over the next few weeks, Miranda became my shadow, my tutor, and my tormentor. Our sessions were grueling. We didn't focus on makeup or clothes at first, we focused on the fundamentals. She taught me how to walk, not just how to balance in heels, but how to move. "Women walk with their hips, Ethan," she'd say, tapping my side with a long, thin ruler. "It's a different center of gravity. You sway, you don't stomp. Imagine there's a string pulling you forward from your sternum. Grace, elegance." We spent hours walking back and forth across her spacious office, my feet aching, until the movement started to feel less like a clumsy imitation and more like a second nature. She completely retrained my voice. We did vocal exercises for hours on end, pushing my natural register higher, softening my cadence, eliminating the flat, monotone quality of my normal speech. "A woman's voice has melody," she insisted. "It rises and falls, it persuades, it soothes, it captivates." She taught me etiquette, from how to hold a wine glass to how to gracefully exit a car. She taught me how to sit, how to stand, how to laugh. "A lady does not guffaw," she chided me once. "She tinkles." But the most profound changes were the ones she initiated on a physical level. One afternoon, she looked at me with a critical eye. "The makeup can only do so much," she said. "Your skin is a man's skin, the texture is wrong, and the constant need to shave is a liability. We need a more permanent solution." She arranged for me to begin laser hair removal on my face. The sessions were painful, little zaps of heat that felt like a rubber band snapping against my skin. But the results were undeniable. After a few weeks, the shadow of stubble that had always been there, even after a close shave, was gone. My jawline was smooth, soft. It made the makeup go on easier, look more natural. Then, she broached a new subject, one that sent a jolt of fear and excitement through me. "For a campaign of this magnitude, we need absolute authenticity," she said, her tone businesslike. "Everly's skin needs to have that luminous, soft quality, and your voice needs to maintain its softer pitch without constant effort. I have a contact, a doctor who specializes in bio-identical hormone therapies. A very low-dose estrogen regimen would do wonders. It would soften your skin, perhaps even thin your body hair a bit. It's purely for aesthetic purposes, of course, to protect the brand's investment." She framed it as a professional necessity, a cosmetic treatment, no different than the laser hair removal. But I knew it was more than that. This was a line I never thought I would cross. This was no longer just a costume. This was changing my body's chemistry. I was terrified, but Miranda was persuasive and a part of me. The part that was falling deeper and deeper under Everly's spell was intensely curious. What would it feel like? "You have a choice. You know," Miranda said to me one day, her sharp eyes seeming to look straight into my soul. "You can continue to play dress-up, to be a man pretending to be a woman. Or you can commit. You can stop acting like a woman and start the process of becoming one. The choice is yours. Everly." She had called me Everly. It was the first time she had done so when I was out of costume. The name hung in the air between us, a promise and a challenge. I started the low-dose estrogen. It came in the form of a clear gel I had to rub on my shoulder every morning. For the first few weeks, I didn't notice much. But then, slowly, the changes began. My skin, as Miranda had predicted, became softer, smoother. I found myself touching my own arm, fascinated by the change in texture. My body odor changed, becoming fainter, sweeter, and my emotions were all over the place. I cried during a sappy commercial. I felt a surge of inexplicable joy watching a sunset. My emotional world, once a calm and predictable landscape, was now a turbulent, vibrant, and confusing place. The most startling change was in my chest. My nipples became incredibly sensitive, and then I started to feel a tender ache behind them. Small, firm buds were beginning to form. I was terrified, but also fascinated. My body was changing, shifting, becoming something new. Miranda also took control of my entire life. She insisted I start a rigorous skincare routine with a dozen different creams and serums I had to apply every morning and night. She scheduled regular manicures and pedicures. A woman's hands and feet are her calling cards. Everly, she would say, she put me on a diet and exercise regimen designed to create a leaner, more graceful physique. She even took me shopping for my at-home wardrobe. You cannot be Everly in front of the cameras and then go home to Ethan's sloppy hoodies, she declared. She filled my closet not with dresses and skirts, but with soft cashmere sweaters, silk blouses, tailored trousers, and elegant loungewear. It was still technically men's clothing, but it was a world away from what I was used to. It was clothing that demanded good posture and a certain amount of self-respect. The line was blurring so much I could barely see it anymore. I spent my days being trained to be a woman. My body was slowly being shaped by hormones and treatments to be more like a woman's. And even my own apartment was starting to look like it belonged to someone else. Ethan Cole, the accountant, was fading away. He was a ghost who lived in the quiet moments before I went to sleep, a voice of panic and confusion that was growing fainter and fainter every day. In his place was Everly. She wasn't just a persona anymore. She was a presence, an identity that was taking root in the very core of my being. Miranda wasn't just creating an image. She was sculpting a new person, and I was letting her, in fact, I was helping her. An entire year had passed since that fateful company party. In that time, Miss Everly had become a household name. She was on billboards, in magazines, and on television commercials. She was the face of a global brand, an icon of grace and beauty. And Ethan Cole had all but vanished. The transformation was no longer just skin deep. The estrogen, though still a low dose, had worked its subtle magic. My skin was soft and almost translucent. A sprinkle of freckles, previously invisible, now stood out across my nose. My body hair was finer, and the small, sensitive buds in my chest had grown into definite, albeit small, breasts that were a constant, secret presence beneath my shirts. My voice had settled into a naturally softer, higher pitch. I no longer had to force it. My life was a carefully managed routine orchestrated by Miranda. Days were filled with photo shoots, press interviews, and public appearances as Everly, followed by evenings of training and maintenance. My old life, the quiet evenings with a spreadsheet and a takeout container, felt like a memory from someone else's biography. The company was hosting its annual gala, a lavish black tie affair. A year ago, I had attended as Ethan Cole, a shy accountant who got drunk on cheap champagne. This year, I was attending as Miss Everly, the guest of honor. Miranda and her team spent the entire day preparing me. The dress was a masterpiece of black lace, with long, sheer sleeves and a neckline that was modest but hinted at the new curves beneath. It was paired with a simple string of pearls and diamond stud earrings. Marco's makeup was understated and elegant as smoky eye. A classic red lip. Chloe had decided against a wig. My own hair, which I hadn't cut in a year, now fell to my shoulders. She had styled it in soft, glamorous waves that looked completely natural, because they were. When I looked in the mirror, I felt a wave of dizziness. There was not a single trace of Ethan left. The woman staring back at me was Everly. She was real. I was her. The internal division, the man versus the woman, had dissolved. There was only one person here now. Liam was my designated escort for the evening. When he arrived at my apartment to pick me up, he stopped dead in the doorway. He was wearing a classic tuxedo that made him look like a movie star. He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. "Everly," he breathed. He had stopped calling me Ethan months ago, even in private. You look, I don't have the words. The ride to the gala was charged with a palpable tension. I was nervous, my hands clenched in my lap. He must have noticed, because he reached over and gently took one of my hands in his. His thumb stroked the back of my hand, a simple, comforting gesture that made my heart leap into my throat. "You're going to steal the show," he said, his voice a low rumble. Walking into the ballroom on his arm was a surreal experience. Everyone I worked with was there, all my colleagues from accounting, sales, marketing. They all turned to look. I saw the recognition, the awe, the whispers. "That's Miss Everly?" No one saw Ethan Cole. He was invisible, a ghost they had long since forgotten. The evening was a whirlwind of polite conversation, air kisses, and champagne. I played my part perfectly. Thanks to Miranda's relentless training, I was charming, witty, and graceful. Liam stayed by my side the entire time, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. His presence was a warm, solid anchor in a sea of faces. Later in the evening, we found a quiet table on a terrace overlooking the city lights. The cool night air was a welcome relief. "You're amazing, you know that," he said, his eyes serious as they searched my face in the dim light. "Watching you tonight, you're more comfortable in your own skin than anyone I know." "It's not my skin," I whispered, the old insecurity bubbling up for a moment. "Isn't it?" he challenged gently. "It looks like your skin to me." He leaned closer. I could smell the faint, clean scent of his cologne, a masculine aroma that mixed intoxicatingly with the scent of my own floral perfume and the waxy, cherry scent of my lipstick. My mind went blank. All I was aware of was his proximity, the warmth radiating from his body, the intensity in his dark eyes. "I don't care who you were a year ago. Everly," he murmured, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't decipher. "I only care about the person who is sitting in front of me right now." My breath hitched. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. This was it, the moment I had been both dreading and, if I was honest with myself, secretly fantasizing about for months. He slowly closed the distance between us. His hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb stroking my cheek. And I really, really want to kiss that person right now. It wasn't a question, but he paused, giving me a chance to pull away. I couldn't. Some part of me, a part that had been dormant for my entire life, was screaming yes. I wanted this. I wanted him. His lips met mine. It was a soft, tentative kiss at first, a gentle exploration. It wasn't forceful or demanding. It was tender, but it shattered my world. Every nerve ending in my body caught fire. My mind, usually a whirl of anxiety and calculation, went completely silent. There was only the sensation of his lips on mine, the feeling of his hand holding my face, the dizzying realization that this was real. This was happening. I leaned into him, my own hand coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart through the fabric of his tuxedo jacket. The kiss deepened, becoming more confident, more passionate. It wasn't just a physical act. It felt like an acceptance. He wasn't kissing a man in a dress. He was kissing me. He was kissing Everly. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. He rested his forehead against mine, his eyes still closed. "Wow," he whispered. I couldn't speak. My entire universe had just been rewritten. The last wall between Ethan and Everly had crumbled into dust. Ethan would have been terrified by that kiss. He would have panicked, run away. But Everly had kissed him back, and she had loved it. In that moment, under the glittering city lights, I knew there was no going back. The seduction wasn't just about Liam desiring me. It was about me, finally, truly, desiring myself. The performance was over. This was my reality now. The year that followed the gala was a blur of acceptance and finality. The kiss with Liam had been a point of no return. It had erased the last vestiges of my doubt, the lingering ghost of the man I used to be. Our relationship blossomed cautiously at first, then with a deep and profound certainty. He was in love with Everly, and I, in turn, was in love with the man who saw me for who I truly was. The transition from a public persona to a private identity was seamless because there was no longer a difference between the two. With the company's full backing and Miranda's expert guidance, I began the legal process of changing my name. Filling out the paperwork felt less like a monumental decision and more like a simple correction of a clerical error. One crisp autumn afternoon, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was my new passport. The photo showed the face I now saw in the mirror every day, and underneath it, in clean official type, were the words Miss Everly Cole. Seeing it in print was the final lock clicking into place. Ethan Cole was now a legal fiction, a name on an old birth certificate. I was Everly. My physical transition continued under the guidance of my doctor. We slightly increased the hormone dosage, and the changes became more pronounced. My hips widened subtly, and my waist narrowed, giving me a permanent gentle curve that no longer required padding to accentuate. My face softened even more, losing the last of its masculine angularity. My hair, now my proudest feature, ascended past my shoulders in thick auburn waves. Life settled into a new, wonderful rhythm. Liam and I moved in together. He never once made me feel strange or freakish. To him, my past was simply part of my story, the prologue to the woman he loved. He celebrated every small milestone with me the day I could finally walk in 5-inch stilettos without wobbling. The first time a stranger on the street called me ma'am, when I wasn't even wearing makeup. My career as Everly flourished. I was no longer just a model. I was a brand ambassador, a spokeswoman. My story, carefully curated by Miranda and the company, was spun into a narrative of empowerment and self-discovery, the story of a woman who found her true essence. It was, in its own way, the absolute truth. One day, Miranda called me into her office. She had an offer for me. "The brand is launching in Europe," she said, her voice filled with pride. "They want you to be the face of the international campaign. There's a major beauty conference in Paris. You would be the keynote speaker." Paris. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. It was the biggest stage yet. The night before I was due to leave, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bedroom I shared with Liam. I was wearing a simple silk robe, my face clean of makeup, my hair falling naturally around my shoulders. I stared at my reflection for a long time, searching for some trace of the man I used to be. I tried to remember what his face looked like, the exact shape of his jaw, the worry lines on his forehead, but the memory was foggy, distant. It was like trying to recall a character from a book I'd read a long time ago. The person in the mirror was the only reality I knew now. Her soft eyes, her full lips, the gentle slope of her shoulders that was me. I couldn't remember the last time I had truly seen Ethan. He hadn't just faded away, he had been completely and utterly replaced. The conference in Paris was a dazzling affair. I stood on a massive stage, bathed in spotlights, a sea of faces looking up at me. I spoke about authenticity, about the courage to present your true self to the world. The words flowed effortlessly, because they were my own. This was my story. After my speech, there was a reception. As I mingled, a familiar figure made his way through the crowd. It was Liam. He had flown in to surprise me. He looked impossibly handsome, his eyes shining with pride. He took both of my hands in his. "You were incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at me, really looked at me, and a soft, sad smile touched his lips. "You know," he said quietly, "you're not the person I made that stupid bet with all that time ago. Not really." A pang of fear went through me, but then he squeezed my hands, his smile widening. "But I'm so glad," he continued, "because the woman standing in front of me right now, she's the one I fell in love with. She's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with." Tears welled in my eyes. I smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached every corner of my being. "Ethan isn't gone," I said, my voice soft but certain. He just finally found what he was looking for his whole life, and what he was looking for was me. Epilogue, feminized by society or by herself. I am standing on a different stage now. Years later, the lights are just as bright, the applause just as loud. I am accepting an award, not just as a brand ambassador, but as an icon for true essence. A company that has built an empire on the philosophy of living your authentic self. my authentic self. Liam is in the front row, his face a perfect picture of love and adoration. Miranda is beside him, looking as regal as ever, a rare, proud smile on her lips. They are my family, the architects of my new life. As the flashes from the cameras pop and whir around me, a thought drifts through my mind, a question I've pondered in quiet moments over the years. Was I feminized by a drunken bet, by my colleagues, by a corporation that saw an opportunity? Did society and circumstance conspire to turn a quiet accountant into a glamorous woman? They all certainly played their part. They opened the door, pushed me through it, and showed me a world I never knew existed. They gave me the tools, the training, and the permission to change. But as I look out at the crowd, my heart full and my spirit soaring, I know the real answer. They didn't turn me into a woman. They only helped me discover the one who was hiding inside me all along. The world didn't create Miss Everly. They just gave Ethan Cole the courage to finally let her live. And I am eternally grateful. For the first time in my life, I am truly, completely, and unapologetically myself. Of course, here is the continuation of the story. Life after the spotlight, or rather, life within the spotlight's warm and steady glow, found a beautiful rhythm. The name on my passport was Everly Cole, but the name on our shared lease was Everly and Liam. Our apartment became a sanctuary, a place where the polished brand ambassador could trade her designer heels for fuzzy slippers and curl up on the couch with the man she loved. He made me laugh. He held me when the phantom insecurities of a life left behind would whisper in the dark. And he saw me truly, saw me every single day. Our mornings were my favorite. They were a quiet ritual of domestic bliss. I'd be up first, the early morning light filtering through the blinds. The hormones had made my skin sensitive to the sun, and I loved the feeling of its gentle warmth. I'd make coffee, the rich aroma filling our small kitchen. I'd sit at our breakfast nook in one of my silk robes, reading the news on my tablet, my long hair tied back in a loose knot. Liam would stumble out of the bedroom a little while later, his hair a mess, and wrap his arms around me from behind, burying his face in my neck. "Morning. Beautiful," he'd mumble, his voice thick with sleep. "Morning," I'd reply, leaning back into his embrace. In these moments, Ethan was not a ghost or a secret. He was simply a prequel. He was the story of how I began, a black and white film that had led to this vibrant, full-color life. He was a memory, and for the first time, it didn't hurt to remember him. That sense of peace was shattered on a Tuesday. I was going through my emails, a mix of work correspondence from Miranda's office and the usual spam. And then I saw a name in my inbox that made my blood run cold. Ben Cole, my brother. I hadn't spoken to Ben in nearly 2 years. Our communication had dwindled as my transformation became all-consuming. At first, I made excuses. I was busy with a huge project at work. I was traveling. Then I just stopped replying. The guilt was a constant, low-level hum in the back of my mind. But the fear of explaining the inexplicable was greater. Ben was a construction foreman, a man of simple certainties: beer, football, and hard work. He loved his little brother, Ethan, the nerdy accountant. How could I ever explain Everly to him? My hand trembled as I clicked open the email. "Hey, Ethan. Hope this email still finds you. It's been way too long. Listen, I've got some good news. The company is sending me out your way for a big project. I'll be in town for a couple of weeks, starting next Monday. I'd love to finally see you. Catch up. Grab a beer. It feels like it's been a decade. Let me know when you're free." Bam. I read the email 3 times, the words blurring together. A wave of nausea rolled over me. He was coming here. Next week, he wanted to see Ethan, the quiet, predictable, male brother he remembered. My perfect, carefully constructed world suddenly felt incredibly fragile, like a house of glass with a brick hurtling toward it. Liam found me minutes later, still staring at the screen, my face pale. "Everly, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I've heard from one." I showed him the email. He read it, his expression growing serious. He pulled up a chair and took my hand. His was warm and steady. Mine was ice cold. "Okay," he said calmly, his voice the anchor I desperately needed. "Okay, we knew this might happen someday." What am I going to do? Liam, the panic was rising in my throat, hot and acidic. He's coming here. He's going to be looking for his brother. Do I lie? Do I tell him Ethan moved to another country? Do I just disappear? "No," he said firmly, his eyes locking with mine. "You're not going to lie, and you're not going to disappear. Everly Cole doesn't run from things." "But he won't understand," I cried, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilling over. "He'll hate me. He'll think I'm some kind of freak. He'll think I killed his brother." "Or," Liam said softly, wiping a tear from my cheek with his thumb, "he'll see his sibling is happy for the first time in their life. You have to give him a chance. Everly, you have to give yourself a chance to be seen for who you are, by everyone, not just the people in this curated world we've built." We talked for hours that night. We went through that every possible scenario. The idea of meeting Ben, of seeing the confusion and potential disgust on his face, was the most terrifying thing I had ever contemplated. It was more frightening than the first photo shoot, more daunting than my first public appearance. This was different. This was family. This was the one person from my old life who I still, secretly, craved acceptance from. With Liam's unwavering support, I made a decision. I would meet him. I owed Ethan that much. I owed Everly that much. I replied to the email. "Hi, Ben. It's great to hear from you. A lot has changed since we last spoke, more than I can explain in an email. I would love to see you. How about we meet for coffee next Tuesday at 10 a.m.? There's a place called The Daily Grind near the city center. Talk soon. E." I signed it with an initial, a small act of cowardice I couldn't help. I didn't feel right signing it as Ethan, but I couldn't bring myself to write Everly. Not yet. The week leading up to the meeting was agony. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I looked in the mirror, I tried to see myself through Ben's eyes. He remembered a skinny, awkward young man with short brown hair and a perpetually worried expression. He would be looking for him. He wouldn't be looking for the woman staring back at me now. "What do you wear to tell your brother that you've become your own sister? I must have tried on a dozen outfits." I didn't want to look like Miss Everly, the glamorous model. That felt like a costume, a shield, but I couldn't wear men's clothes. That felt like a lie of a different kind. In the end, I chose a simple, elegant outfit, a pair of well-fitting dark jeans, a cream-colored cashmere sweater, and flat leather boots. My hair was down, my makeup minimal, just a bit of foundation to even out my skin tone, a touch of mascara, and a nude gloss on my lips. I wanted to look like myself, my real, everyday self. Liam drove me to the cafe. He squeezed my hand before I got out of the car. "You can do this," he said. "Just tell him your truth. I'll be right here. Call me the second you're done." I walked into the cafe, my heart hammering against my ribs. I saw him immediately. He was sitting at a table near the window, his back to me. He looked older, his shoulders broader, but it was unmistakably him. He was scrolling through his phone, looking for all the world like a man patiently waiting for his brother. For a moment, I froze. I could still turn around, run out the door, and disappear from his life forever. But then I thought of Liam's words. Everly Cole doesn't run from things. I took a deep breath and walked toward the table. "Ben," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He looked up from his phone, a smile already forming on his face. "Ethan, man, I was just about to—" The smile vanished. His eyes scanned my face, my hair, my clothes. Confusion morphed into disbelief, then into a deep, unsettling frown. He looked past me, toward the door, as if expecting someone else to walk in. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice wary. My throat was dry. "Ben, it's me," I said, my voice cracking on the last word. "It's Ethan." He stared at me, his brow furrowed. He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing as he really looked at me, searching for a trace of the face he knew. I could see the exact moment he found it, a flicker of recognition in my eyes, the familiar shape of my nose. And the recognition wasn't followed by understanding. It was followed by horror. He recoiled as if I'd struck him. "What is this?" he stammered, his voice low and shaky. "Is this some kind of joke? Where's my brother? What have you done?" "I am your brother," I said, tears starting to well in my eyes. I'm still me. I'm just different now." "Different?" He let out a short, harsh laugh that was filled with pain. "Different? This isn't different. This is... What the hell is this? You're in a wig. You're wearing makeup. What? Did you lose a bet or something?" "It's not a wig," I said softly, reaching up to touch my own hair. "This is me now. My name is Everly." The name just hung there in the air, alien and absurd. He shook his head, looking around the cafe as if he was trapped in a nightmare. No, my brother's name is Ethan. He's an accountant. He's a man." "That person you remember, he was never happy. Ben," I pleaded, trying to keep my voice steady. "He was hiding. Everly, this is the first time I've ever felt like myself." He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. People at other tables turned to look. His face was pale, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a profound, heartbreaking sadness. "I don't know who you are," he said, his voice cold and final, "but you're not my brother." He threw a $20 bill on the table and walked away without looking back. I watched him go. A silent scream trapped in my throat. I sat there, frozen, as the bustling life of the cafe continued around me, oblivious to the fact that my world had just been shattered. The ghost of Ethan wasn't just a memory anymore. He was the brother Ben had loved and lost, and in that moment, I felt like a murderer. I had built my beautiful new life, but I had built it on the ashes of someone my brother had loved. I had found myself, but I had lost him, and I had no idea if I could ever get him back.